Hello, and welcome to an Average American podcast. I am your host, Sergey. Today, we're diving into a fascinating exploration of how technology has fundamentally transformed our media landscape in the United States. I'm excited to take you on this journey through the past, present, and hopefully future of media technology. When Johannes Gutenberg invented the movable type printing press in the 1400s, he couldn't have imagined how profoundly his technology would transform human civilization. The ability to mass produce written materials assisted in spreading the human knowledge cheaply and far and wide. It sparked the revolution in science, religion, politics, and technology. More than 500 years later, we're witnessing another revolutionary transformation of how information is created and distributed. Media has always evolved alongside the technology, from Gutenberg's press to Marconi's radios, from television broadcast to internet streaming. Each technological innovation has reshaped our media landscape. But today, something fundamentally different is happening, in my opinion. Media isn't just distributed through technology. Media is the technology. Or, in reverse, you could say technology is media. Algorithms determine what news we see. Artificial intelligence writes articles and podcasts, for that matter. It creates images that are indistinguishable from human work. Digital distribution has made traditional gatekeepers, our traditional media, almost obsolete. Guess who assisted me in creating this very podcast? I will give you 3 guesses. AI, or AI. In today's episode, we'll explore the technological transformation of media. We'll examine how tech disrupted traditional media business models, democratized content creation, and is now automating the creative process itself. By the end, we'll try to answer an interesting and also critical question. Is the technological revolution in media good for society, bad, or both? Let's dive into our first section. The tech that killed traditional media. I know I remember, I don't know if you do, when watching TV meant flipping through channels on the cable, switching the actual switch on the television itself. Do you remember when reading the news meant physically holding a newspaper or a magazine? Those days are long gone, even though I clearly remember them. Technological disruption behind this change was swift and one could say merciless. It taken only a few decades. Compare that with printing of books we just talked about. Let's start with broadcasting. When Netflix launched its streaming service only about 15 years ago, few predicted it would transform the entire entertainment industry we know today. Today, streaming platforms like Disney+, Netflix, Fubo, or YouTube have fundamentally changed how we consume video content. Traditional television viewership has plummeted, especially amongst younger people like my own children. They rarely, if ever, watch what I would describe as traditional television. Meanwhile, streaming services collectively boast billions of subscribers worldwide. What exactly happened? Technology enabled content delivery that was so much more convenient, so much more personalized and on demand. No more scheduling your life around when a show airs on television live. No more sitting through commercials, no more being limited to what network executives decide to put on the air. The consumer, broadly speaking, gained almost complete control, and traditional broadcasting networks lost their grip on massive consumer entertainment market. The same revolution happened in audio as well. Podcasts, like the one you're listening to right now, have exploded in popularity. There are now millions of podcast shows with tens of millions of episodes available just on Apple Podcasts. Traditional radio, meanwhile, has seen its audience in a steady decline. The technology that powers podcasting allows for niche content creation, time-shifted listening, and close relationship between creators and their audiences. Radio, television simply cannot match that. But perhaps the most drastic technological disruption happened in print media. Newspapers and magazines, institutions that survived, as we talked about, for 500 years, have been devastated by the internet. Thousands of newspapers closed across the United States. Once mighty publications have drastically reduced their print operations or entirely eliminated them. Instead, ebooks, digital subscriptions, news online aggregators have transformed how we consume written content. Why wait for tomorrow's newspaper or a weekly newspaper when you can get your update within seconds of news being published somewhere on the internet? And you do that on your phone. You don't even have to walk and turn television on. Why store physical books when millions of them literally are available over the internet and thousands can fit on your phone, which you need to carry with you anyway? Behind all these changes lies perhaps the most transformative technological shift, the revolution in advertising technology. Google and Facebook's, and later you could argue TikTok and YouTube, built their empires by creating more efficient ways to deliver ads, at the same time making those ads ideally more relevant to the viewer or a listener. Programmatic advertising uses AI to automatically buy, sell, and place digital ads in milliseconds. With targeted capabilities, traditional media, again, simply cannot match or even offer. This technology causes advertising dollars flee from traditional media. In just 15 years, newspaper advertising revenue in the United States collapsed from roughly about 50 billion to only about 10 billion. Imagine how companies who rely on that revenue have to cope. It is literally impossible. The money, however, did not just disappear into thin air. Instead, it moved to more technological platforms that offer advertisers better targeting, better measurements, and better, as a result, a return on their investment. The consequences for journalism as a skill set have been profound. As the ad revenue vanished, traditional newsrooms shrank. Investigative reporting, which requires time and effort and resources, in other words, money, became much harder to finance. Local news coverage suffered particularly badly, creating what researchers call news deserts, communities with limited or almost no access to journalism. I personally argue we need professional journalism who have education and experience that we have today. However, people like podcasters are rapidly catching up, gaining access to where traditional journalists used to dominate, to say the least, United States President's newsroom. But while these technological disruptions have threatened traditional media business models today, they've also created abundant opportunities for new people and new companies to barge into an open marketplace and thrive within it. Which brings us to the next interesting section, democratization of the media. In 1997, if you wanted to reach a mass audience, you needed pretty expensive infrastructure, printing presses, broadcast hours, distribution deals. You needed massive amount of capital. You needed connections. You need the approval of your bosses or further up the chain gatekeepers. Today, all you need is a smartphone and an internet connection, which literally almost all of us in the United States already have. The barrier to entry for media creators has fallen to nearly $0. This technological shift has dramatically democratized media production in what used to be in an unprecedented way. Look at YouTube. What began as a simple video sharing site has evolved into the world's second largest search engine and the primary source for information and entertainment for billions of people, literally billions around the world. Your top YouTubers command audience that traditional TV networks can only dream of. Literally millions tune in to listen to certain content creators. The platform created entirely new genres of content, new career paths, new marketing and financial opportunities for millions of people. You cannot overestimate that impact. TikTok is one of the most recent players in that sphere, is rapidly catching up with YouTube even, or Facebook. It is clearly evident that advertisers see new players in the sphere and embrace them almost immediately. The podcast industry has undergone a similar transformation. Creating a professional sounding podcast only once in the past required expensive recording equipment and studio access. Now, with affordable microphones and free or almost free editing software, anyone can produce broadcast quality audio from their bedroom. Distribution platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts and YouTube make these shows readily available to audiences around the world at no cost to the creator. Many independent podcasters now earn substantial incomes through advertisers, subscription, merchandising, completely bypassing traditional media gatekeepers like cable networks. Take this podcast, for example. From the past days, I had a semi-decent microphone already. I spent maybe $100 on soundproofing my basement with some cheap wall foam and a microphone stand. My microphone, which I bought almost a decade ago when I was doing more presentations on programming around the country, I spent, if I recall, maybe $80 or $90 on. So today, you could be a legitimate podcaster with decent audio for probably under $200. Written content has been democratized as well. Platforms like Substack have enabled journalists and just writers in general to also bypass traditional publishers and connect directly with their audiences. Some top newsletter writers now earn more from their subscriber base than they did working for prestigious publications. The technology makes it possible to monetize 1,000 true fans rather than needing to reach millions through the traditional advertiser-supported models and responding to a giant ladder of bosses after bosses telling you what to do. This democratization has brought fresh voices and fresh perspectives into media landscape. Communities and viewpoints that were historically underrepresented in mainstream media can now build their own platforms, their own audiences. Creators from diverse backgrounds can now find people interested in what they have to say without needing an approval from anybody. This technology has enabled a flourishing of niche content previously simply non-existent. And on top of that, these companies like Spotify or Apple Podcast make or enable new content creators to create commercially viable products and literally make a living off their passions. But there is an important caveat to this democratized landscape. While anyone can create content, getting it heard remains challenging. And that's because new gatekeepers have emerged, the technology platforms themselves. Despite the open access to publishing tools, the tech giants still control visibility. YouTube's recommendation algorithm determines which videos thrive and which disappear into obscurity. Twitter trending topics shape public conversations. Facebook's newsfeed algorithm decides what content reaches billions of users. These algorithmic gatekeepers operate with limited transparency and can change their rules on a whim at any moment, often with big consequences for creators who build their livelihoods on these platforms. A single algorithm update can cause creators' visibility and income, therefore, to plummet overnight with no recourse. And there is another challenge in this democratized landscape: the relationship between independent media and traditional journalism. Many streamers, podcasters, news writers still heavily rely on reporting done by traditional news organizations like Reuters or Associated Press. They may analyze, interpret, and criticize that reporting, but they need the source material. As traditional newsrooms continue to shrink, this raises questions about where tomorrow's original reporting will come from. Can this democratized media ecosystem sustain the kind of journalism that needs to hold the powerful accountable? My personal opinion is that streaming with an audience can ask questions of politicians, be willing to participate in such forums. The future of democratic information flow in the United States. We do, however, need to make sure that that venue is ready and available. We do want to hold our politicians accountable and sometimes force them to participate in these open forums. If you recall from the last election, Donald Trump actually did that. He went on a widely available podcast. He was unafraid to do so, whereas Democratic candidate kind of bailed, went on one visibly friendly podcast when no hard questions were asked. Speaking of algorithms, let's look more closely at how these technological systems are shaping what content we see and why. Let's dive into algorithm wars. If you ever fallen down a YouTube rabbit hole, spent hours scrolling through TikTok, like me, or notice that your social media feeds seems to know what you wanted to do before you realized, you've experienced the power of content recommendation, AI-powered algorithms. These sophisticated machine learning systems analyze your behavior without you even noticing. They see what you click, what you watch, what you like, how long you engage, and they predict what they need to do to keep your attention. The technology behind this recommendation is simply astounding to me and increasingly shaped our economic media consumption in ways that are kind of scary and subtle and sometimes rarely obvious. Modern algorithms process thousands of signals from explicit preferences you indicated to your behavioral patterns that you may not even be aware of. They create detailed profiles of your interests, which grow more accurate with every interaction you have with those algorithms. The effectiveness of these systems is reflected in extraordinary engagement metrics they generate. TikTok users, for example, spend on average, by some reports, 95 minutes per day on the app. YouTube serves over 1 billion hours of video daily. These engagement statistics would be impossible without algorithmic curation that keeps users engaged, watching just one more video, just one more, and I'll be done. But this technology raises profound questions about autonomy and manipulation. Are we choosing what we consume, or what we consume is being chosen for us by sophisticated software? Research suggests these systems often optimize for engagement rather than user satisfaction or well-being. Why is that, you say? Long time ago, psychologists realized that content, whatever it is, whatever you watch, whatever you listen to, that evokes, that creates strong emotional response, regardless of what the response is. Could be love, could be fear, outrage, amazement. It tends to receive preferential treatment regardless of its accuracy or value. In other words, our brains are fine-tuned to remember and be more engaged with emotionally strong content. This creates what researchers call filter bubbles or information cocoons, personalized informational environments that can enforce existing beliefs, limit exposure to diverse perspectives. In political realm, this technological sorting has contributed to great polarization and a breakdown of shared reality. At this point, one could argue that facts matter a lot less than they used to even 50 years ago, certainly before the advent of the internet. And now we're building our society around shared beliefs more so than shared facts. The stakes of these algorithms wars extend beyond just what entertainment we consume. On Facebook, newsfeed algorithm determines which news stories and information reach billions of people worldwide. Twitter's trending topic can shape public discourse and outrage. Google's search algorithm influences what information we find and trust and view. These algorithms aren't neutral technological tools. They embody specific values, specific priorities, often align purely with business interests of the companies that create them. In other words, those algorithms don't exist to benefit us as viewers. They exist to benefit companies to maximize their profit. Maximizing user engagement, therefore, means maximizing advertising revenue, and does not necessarily mean that it will promote healthy public discourse or accurate information. And the most concerning development in this algorithmic media landscape involves the rise of misinformation in AI-manipulated media. Deepfakes, which are hyper-realistic fabricated videos and audios, or photos for that matter, created using AI or artificial intelligence, have advanced very rapidly. Early deepfakes were easily identifiable, but technology has improved tremendously in just 5 years. It can now create quite convincing fake videos that are nearly impossible to distinguish by naked eyes from authentic footage. Coupled with synthetic voice technology, it can mimic anyone's speech patterns from a few minutes of audio samples, creates unprecedented challenges for determining what is actually a fact behind digital media. AI systems can generate convincing fake news articles as well, social media posts or comments at scale. These technology make it possible to create synthetic information campaigns that appear to represent genuine grassroots sentiment or reporting. The technology has advanced faster than our system for verification, trust, or even government systems. Traditional signals of media credibility, brand name, production quality, reputation, they no longer reliably indicate authenticity or quality. Anyone can create professional-looking content and establish media brands that could be convincingly impersonated. The war for algorithmic control of our attention is being fought largely behind closed doors, with limited oversight, if any. Tech companies guard their recommendation algorithms as closely held trade secret as it is. Researchers and regulators struggle to understand exactly how those systems work and what they do. As users, we're often unaware of the extent to which our media consumption is being shaped by these invisible technological hands. Every click, every pause, every newsfeed into these systems was designed to predict and influence our next move. This brings us to perhaps the most revolutionary technological development in media, the rise of AI-generated content. No longer just curated, human-created media. Artificial intelligence is now replacing humans by creating authentic content on its own. A while ago, the Associated Press announced it was using AI to write thousands of earnings reports and sports recaps. At that time, this seemed like a convenient automation of routine journalism. Just less than a decade later, AI systems can write in-depth feature articles, create realistic images from text descriptions, generate convincing video footage, even mimic human voices with uncanny accuracy. We have entered the era of AI-generated media, where technology doesn't just distribute content, it creates authentic content. Several major news organizations now regularly publish AI-generated content. These articles typically cover data-heavy subjects like financial reporting, sport games, weather updates. The technology excels at quickly processing mountain of information and producing clear factual summaries, often faster and certainly much cheaper than human journalists. But AI writing has rapidly expanded beyond simple data reporting. LLMs or large language models can produce opinion pieces, cultural analysis, and create content that's increasingly difficult to distinguish from human writing. Some publications use these systems to draft articles that human editors later refine, creating a hybrid production model. The implications for journalism are profound. Entry-level positions, historically where reporters learned the craft, may disappear completely. The economics are compelling for struggling news organizations. AI doesn't just require health insurance, doesn't take vacations, doesn't work just 8 hours a day. It can do a lot more than humans at a fraction of the cost. This raises serious questions about the future career pipeline for journalists and even, for that matter, the whole sustainability of the entire profession. But writing is just the beginning of AI creative capabilities. Perhaps even more stunning is the revolution of visual media. Systems that create images from text can generate incredibly realistic photos or art from written descriptions. Stock photography companies now offer AI-generated images that never require the photo shoot. Marketers can create customized visual content without hiring designers. Publishers can illustrate articles without commissioning artists. The technology that has democratized visual creation while simultaneously threatening the livelihood of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of photographers, illustrators, designers, and writers. The technology extends to video as well. AI tools can animate still images, generate entirely new video based on text, or create digital avatars that mimic human presenters. We're seeing the emergence of synthetic influencers and virtual hosts that exist entirely as digital creations, but command real human audiences and advertising dollars. Some news organizations have begun experimenting with AI anchors even. Digital recreations of human presenters delivering news 24/7. The technology isn't quite perfect yet, but it's improving rapidly. If you keep up with AI at all, in the past 5 years since the original ChatGPT announcement, it made improvements by leaps and bounds. Even audio, the medium we're using right this second, isn't immune to technological revolution. AI voice synthesis has advanced dramatically, created synthetic voices and capturing even nuances of human speech, including inflection, emotion, pauses, and personality. Some audiobook publishers have started using AI narration instead of human voice actors. Podcasts can now be automatically translated and recreated in different languages with AI that preserve the original speaker's tone and cadence. Will audiences still value human narration when synthetic alternatives become indistinguishable and a lot less expensive? These developments raise profound ethical questions. AI-generated content often relies on training data that includes human-created work, raising issues of intellectual property, compensation, and authenticity. When an AI system creates an image in the style of a living artist, should that artist be compensated? When a synthetic voice limits a real person, what about that real person? The technology evolves certainly faster than our legal and ethical frameworks. There are also serious concerns about attribution and transparency. Should audiences know they're consuming AI-generated content? Some jurisdictions have begun requiring such disclosures, but enforcement remains challenging, especially across international boundaries. As AI-generated content becomes more prevalent and less distinguishable from human-created work, the very concept of authorships becomes ambiguous. Perhaps most concerning is the potential for mass-produced misinformation. The same technology that allows legitimate news organizations to scale their content production also enables bad actors to create convincing fake news, deepfake videos, articles, photos, and audios, and create synthetic media campaigns. The volume and quality makes it easy to create convincing fake media, and it's advancing faster than technology that can detect those fakes. What also is impacting this mass flow of fake news is the cost of AI continues to rapidly decline. In the beginning, 5 years ago, AI was very expensive. These days, ChatGPT offers free tiers that can do some basic work for you completely free of charge. And for $20 a month, you can create virtually unlimited amount of AI-generated content. As creators and consumers, we're entering uncharted territory. Will audiences continue to value human-created content when AI alternatives are cheaper and better, more abundant, and it's increasingly indistinguishable from authentic things? Will we develop a new aesthetic appreciation for AI-generated art? Or will the line between human and machine creation become so blurred that the distinction loses its entire meaning? This question leads us naturally to our final section. What does future hold for media technology? We have traced Our technological transformation of media from the disruption of traditional formats through the rise of algorithmic curation and AI-generated content. But the pace of innovation shows no signs of slowing. What developments might reshape media in the upcoming years? One of the most anticipated frontiers is immersive media, virtual and/or augmented reality storytelling. After several false starts, VR technology has matured significantly, although in my opinion it still remains a niche. Headsets are becoming lighter, more affordable, and capable of delivering compelling experiences. AR glasses are progressing toward mainstream adoption, but still not quite there yet. These technologies offer fundamentally new ways to experience media, or for that matter, experience the entire world. Imagine not just reading about the news, but standing virtually in the middle of a story. Picture educational content that can manipulate 3D models to understand complex concepts. Envision entertainment that responds to your physical movements, your emotional reactions, and your surroundings. Several news organizations have pioneered VR journalism, creating immersive documentaries that transport viewers to refugee camps, disaster zones, protest movements. These experiences create a sense of presence that traditional formats simply cannot match. They potentially generate greater empathy and understanding. But immersive media also raises some ethical consideration. The psychological impact of hyper-realistic virtual experiences remains kind of poorly understood and not studied well by psychologists. When news coverage becomes experiential rather than observational, how does that change journalistic responsibility? And as these technologies improve at neck-breaking speed, the potential for manipulating us as humans, on very basic emotional level expands dramatically. Another emergent frontier involves blockchain technology and decentralized media system. That's sometimes referred to as Web 3.0. Proponents of Web 3 argue that blockchain-based platforms could address some of the problems in our current media ecosystem. Decentralized social networks aim to reduce the power of algorithmic gatekeepers by giving users a lot more control over their data and their content. Cryptocurrency micropayments could create new business models where audiences directly support creators without any intermediary, taking large cuts. These non-fungible tokens or NFTs might enable new forms of digital ownership and creator compensation. These technologies remain somewhat experimental, certainly not mainstream, with some significant technological and usability challenges to overcome. Having said that, they represent important attempts to reimagine the economics and the power structure underlying media system. They propose technological solutions to the concentration of power and misaligned incentives that plague our current media landscape. Within traditional newsrooms, AI is likely to play an expanded but it's somewhat evolving role. Rather than simply replacing journalism, it's more likely to enhance journalistic experience and work. AI systems can analyze vast datasets to identify patterns human reporters may not. They can monitor information from thousands of sources simultaneously, flagging potential news. They can transcribe and summarize interviews, translate content between languages, or generate background research in seconds. These technologies could free journalists from routine tasks, allowing them to focus uniquely on human elements of reporting, building trust with sources, building trust with audiences, exercising judgment based on experience and education, judge newsworthiness on a purely human level. I think the most successful news organizations of the future might be those that find a good balance between technology and human journalism. As we consider these technological possibilities, we return to our central question. Is this transformation of media good or bad for our modern United States society? My honest answer is that it is both. And the ultimate impact depends on the choices that we, as citizens, make collectively. The democratization of media creation has amplified previously marginalized voices and created new forms of creativity and human connection, but has also contributed to information overload, misinformation, and fragmentation of shared factual reality. Algorithmic creation has made content discovery more personalized and efficient, but has also created bubbles optimized for engagement over accuracy and concentrated power in the hands of a few. AI-generated content promises to increase in the volume and accessibility of information while reducing production costs, but it also threatens creative livelihoods, complicates issues of trust and authenticity, and enables new forms of deception. What seems clear is that our media technology are outpacing our social, regulatory, and ethical frameworks for managing them. We're building increasingly powerful tools without adequate systems to ensure they serve human flourishing rather than undermine it. As technology continues transforming the media, we face crucial decisions as creators, as consumers, and just citizens. How do we preserve the value of human creativity and journalism in the age of automation? How do we design recommendation systems that optimize for public interest rather than just engagement and financial benefit to a few companies? How do we create transparency around AI-generated content? How do we build media literacy skills for a world where seeing is no longer believing? These aren't just technical questions, they're profoundly social, political, and human ones. They touch on fundamental values like truth, autonomy, creativity, and shared facts. The future of media will be technological, there is no doubt about that, but the nature, impact of technology remains ours to shape. Personally, I feel that rapidly evolving media landscape is a tidal wave you cannot fight. Deepfakes are simply inevitable. People will be manipulated. However, I feel like positives far outweigh the negatives, and democratization of media is something I'm extremely excited about. We've covered a lot of ground today, exploring how technology has transformed media from print newspapers to AI-generated video. I hope this episode has given you a deeper understanding of the forces reshaping our information ecosystem and the stakes of those changes. If you enjoyed this exploration, please consider subscribing to An Average American Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for listening.